Good evening, afternoon, night, morning, whenever you find a way to watch or listen to this podcast. It's me, Omar, and we have a special podcast today with my co-host Jackson because I have finally sold him on the Ivy League, and I'm so excited for this podcast and this game that we're previewing. Before we start, Jackson, how's everything going?
Everything's going good, man. I hate that we wrapped up the college football season on such a sour note. Forget that Georgia won. It was just such an uncompetitive game. It's been since grade school. I went to bed before a national championship game was over, and I was like, I got work at like 6 something in the morning. I'm not staying up for this because it was well over before halftime. But yeah, we're enjoying an awesome NFL postseason right now. And of course, the best time of the year, all these all-star games slowly starting to flicker in. So I love it, man. And this is a new one right here, not something that we've ever talked about before and hasn't really been around. So excited.
Yes, it's old, but it's also or it's new, but it's also old. So very excited to hop into this one. So I mean, I guess without any further ado, so we'll be previewing. Well, the funny thing is there are two All-Star games called the Dream Bowl that will be played within 24 hours of one another. You have the Dream Bowl, which has been played for 10 years, the HBCU Dream Bowl, which is like not as much a HBCU game anymore. That one is going to be played in Texas in Little Elm, which is a suburb of Dallas. Thought about going, but maybe next year. But there's also the Japan Ivy League Dream Bowl, which is probably the one with the bigger headline because it's won the Ivy League. And also it's in Japan. And Jackson has a little bit of the history on that one, on that game, and also the NFL in Japan and just college football in Japan in general. So we're previewing this game. We're excited for it. I'm pretty sure we're the only podcast doing a preview of this game. So tune in.
Absolutely, man. No, it's awesome I don't think it's getting recognized enough. You're seeing slowly a little bit more buzz on Twitter because 2 weeks ago, if you searched like Dream Bowl, like football on Twitter, you just like didn't really see much of anything. Now you're starting to see the Ivy Leagues themselves post some pictures from practices in Japan, from some of the meetings that we'll get into in just a couple minutes, that are going on throughout Japan on this. So it's cool to see a little bit of excitement build. I would love to see like a stream be announced that we can actually watch this thing, even if it is on a little bit of a tape delay since it's on different days of the week in the US as it is in Japan. But something like that. But it's cool to see regardless. And anytime that you can see American football, just football. We're a football podcast. We'll call it just football. Anytime you can see football be expanded internationally and excitement build, I love seeing that, man. Like it makes my heart warm when I see NFL international fans, as I do see fans get excited about college football overseas. Like it really it makes me happy. It's so cool. As Americans, we're so negative about everything, and especially in sports media. It's like these fans love their teams and like they stand by them through anything, and I love seeing it personally. Look at the NFL Germany crowd this past year, man. Like people love football everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, they've loved it, especially in Japan, for years upon years. So I mean,
Mm-hmm.
not so this game, as we have in our outline, it's a reincarnation of the Rico Ivy Bowl, the Japan Ivy Bowl from 1989 to 1996, which interestingly enough included the Ivy League, but also William and Mary players were included for a couple of years in that game. And it's not, and that one's not even the only All-Star we played in Japan. We had the Japan Bowl, which ran from I muted myself from 1976 to 1993, and it was a high caliber game. Bo Jackson, Ty Detmer played in it. Which I'm just gonna say, like All Star games used to be so cool. Like used to have a chance like to go to Hawaii and Japan, and it's like now like the best destination is like Orlando. It's like I'm not knocking these cities, but they're not Tokyo and they're not Hawaii. So it's like I mean my dying wish is to have will be to have the Hula Bowl back in Hawaii, which I mean hopefully it's not a dying wish. Hopefully it happens. But All-Star games used to be so cool. Not only All-Star games, but every single year from I think 1977 up until 1994, you had the Mirage Bowl, which was played in Tokyo at the end of the season, and it wasn't just like a random like non-conference game in Japan. This game actually had some national implications at times. In 1993, Wisconsin clinched their first berth to the Rose Bowl since 1962 in Tokyo. Like imagine that today.
Really?
Imagine Yes, exactly. That's yeah. So that happened. So Wisconsin ended the Rose Bowl drought in Tokyo. Army played Montana in Tokyo, and Army set the record for most 100-yard rushers in a game with four 100-yard rushers out in Tokyo. Had to throw that one in, but a lot of Power Five teams played in the game. A lot of influential late season games. I think also David Klingler set the record for most passing yards. I think 716 in Tokyo. So it's like a lot of influential football has been played in Japan, and that continues, and we're just so excited for it.
Absolutely, man. We've seen some, as far as professional football goes, we have seen some NFL preseason games take place in Japan, mostly in Tokyo. Haven't seen that in a little bit. The first game was in 1976. The most recent one was in 2005, Atlanta over Indianapolis in that one. We did see, I will say, we didn't have football in Japan, we might not have Terrell Davis. If you don't know that story, look it up. But it's really, we really might not have never seen him if it weren't for the language barrier that came from a special teams preseason, or the special teams portion of a preseason game. So anyways, Omar, do you want to talk a little bit about what football looks like in Japan on their side? Because it is the Ivy League versus Japan, so we got to break down our opponent a little bit, right? Like, what exactly are we looking at here?
Yeah, so looking at the outline, I know that in alternative football circles, the X League is very popular among alternative football. Like alternative football being indoor football, USFL, XFL, that. So the
FCF,
X League is
got to throw those guys in there.
yeah, CFL, yeah, as well. Yeah. So yeah, anything pretty much any pro league that's not the NFL. So the X League X League champion plays against the college champion in the Rice Bowl for the Japanese national championship. Last year, college won. The last time the college won it was in 2009. The colleges won they won seven of the first eight Rice Bowls, excuse me. And I think that's kind of interesting too, because in the X League you got a lot of familiar faces you see. I know Devin Gardner, former Michigan starting quarterback, played in the X League for a period of time. So a lot of well-known players. It's not a bad deal. Like whether it's the European League or the Japan League, spend a few years abroad, living in Japan, and playing pro football. It's not a bad deal at all. So I'm not surprised the X League has won. The Rice Bowl is a ballpark football played at the Tokyo Dome, home of the Tokyo Yomiuri Giants. Baseball fans, Hideki Matsui's former team, one of my favorite Yankees of all time, even though I'm not a Yankees fan. So that's what I have for that's what we have. What you put, Jackson. You're asking me to read for Japan League football. I don't know if there's anything I missed.
I do want to point out that this is something that I did know. Apparently, Japan is the second most successful. I don't know how quite that is measured in American football. Obviously, America being first. And this is a quote from Ruchiro Fukuhori. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that, the commissioner of Japan's National Football Association. It is important for us to invite an American team to Japan each year. The United States is the number one country in American football. I think it is important to take on this kind of challenge every year to see where your level is, or at least where you stand. Japan has been very vocal about how they want to be I don't want to say active, but be good at American football as a country. And they certainly have, I mean, over 17,000 players, over 400 teams between the college and professional levels, right? So I think it's cool that Japan takes this so seriously, and they're doing this in part to see where they stand on their level of play. So I did see on Twitter, Omar, I didn't put this in that line, so I'm kind of going off script here. I did see a roster come out for Japan on Twitter for the for this game, for the Dream Bowl. It is mostly, as you can expect, guys from the X League. I'd say about 90% of the roster is from the X League, probably. There are a few X Leaguers that are former American college football players. Joe Mathis, a former Washington Husky defensive end, plays for the Fujitsu Frontiers, who made the Rice Bowl a couple of years ago, if I remember reading one article right. Byron Beatty Jr., the defensive end from Colorado, was actually playing in this one, which I find interesting. And then some of these team names that I want to go over real quick for the X League that I found very intriguing. IBM Big Blue. it has to be a reference to the conglomerate company, right? Panasonic Impulse is another one. What's another one on here? Oh, the Asahi soft drink challengers I found interesting, and the Obix Seagulls, not Seahawks, Seagulls. So just some interesting X League names there that I found that you know what, maybe they're making fun of us for the Browns and for the former football team name, or you know, something like that. But hey, at least we're not the IBM Big Blue. So
Yeah, I mean that's just proof, I guess, of corporate, corporate Japan taking over, the X League. I think it's interesting, that they do that, but yeah, and that's what I have to say. Like, a lot of fun names. I mean, it's weird. It's like kind of like imagining, one of the teams. Like it's like the New England Patriots being the General Electric Patriots. It's like you wouldn't. It's just something that's just hard to imagine. It's like, and we panic about teams putting ads on like their, on the jersey, like in the NBA. So it's like
the
something that's just
National
so
Football
interesting and
League, they
funny.
don't need the ad revenue of the jerseys. They're doing just fine.
Exactly, exactly. It's just greed at that point. So, yeah, Jackson. I mean, I guess this is I don't know if you want to go to logistics or the trip, like what the Ivy Leaguers have experienced in Japan so far. I'll leave it up to
Yeah,
you.
absolutely. So first of all, the game's going to be held this upcoming Saturday in America, Sunday in Japan, 11 Eastern, 11 p.m. Eastern time, and then 1 p.m. Japanese Standard Time. The game is actually in National Stadium, it's pretty new. It was built for the 2020 Tokyo Olympic Games. I might add, Omar, referencing a previous crossover episode we did, about 25-minute drive to Tokyo Disneyland. You think the winner gets a parade down Main Street, Japan? Possibly.
No comment.
No comment. Okay. All right. Well, Tokyo Disney Sea is the best Disney theme park, is what I've heard. So that's the word on Twitter, at least. So, hey, maybe visit there while you're over in Japan. Teams did arrive on January 15th. And the team is actually, the Ivy League side, at least, is getting to take a part in multiple cultural, experiences in Japan while they're there. They took a couple Ivy League professors to kind of guide the tour, right? Maybe Columbia's football coaching staff isn't the most well adversed in Japanese culture, so they took a couple experts along with them. Now, obviously, they are preparing for the game and practices are well underway, but they did have a planned visit to the U.S. NBC, U.S. Embassy, a lot of interaction with Ivy League alumni that are in Japan for whatever reasons of what over there. Business, I assume, took them over there. And then discussions with like Japanese students and just scholars on that side that get to have those discussions with. So sorry, I'm not the most well adversed in all this. I do want to stick to the football side as much as possible, but I do think it's interesting that both the Ivy Leagues and the NFA, the National Football Association in Japan, are working together to really set this up and make it, more than just an all-star game for our guys. So that's pretty cool. The Ivy League is also working with the NFL to integrate, hopefully, a more NFL pipeline to put coaches on each roster. So it's pretty cool to see the emphasis of, hey, most of these guys are probably going to be playing, or not playing rather, but being professionals in whatever they move on to. But, for the handful of guys, the Cameron Brates of the world, the Kyle Juseks of the world, maybe they do play pro. So it's nice to have that NFL-like development while they're there.
Yeah, and you mentioned this Columbia coaching staff. I just want to give a quick note to Al Bagnoli, who is probably one of the most underrated coaches in the country, the head coach of Columbia. He is the second winningest Ivy League head coach at the moment, second behind Tim Murphy, head coach of Harvard, who's been there since I think like the early '90s. But Bagnoli he led Penn from '92 to 2014, won 148 games there, won 9 Ivy League titles in 23 seasons at Penn, and he's turned around Columbia. Columbia famously had the longest losing streak for a while in a Division I football. Their longest losing streak, they've been a laughing stock. They've only won one Ivy League title in the league's history in 1961. While Bagnoli went from 2-8 to 3-7 to 8-2 in his third year, and Columbia nearly won the Ivy League in 2017. He's continuing to do well. Columbia had a 7-3 record in 2021. In 2022, Columbia went 6-4, a bit of a setback, but this is just amazing for Columbia to do so well. And I just want to give credit for Bagnoli, the head coach of the Columbia Lions staff. It's a well-deserved honor for them to be leading the Ivy League All-Stars, because Bagnoli is I don't know if they induct coaches in the College Football Hall of Fame while they're still coaching, but he's going to be a College Football Hall of Famer. It's no doubt about it. So I just want to give a quick shout out to Al Bagnoli, leader of that Columbia head coaching staff.
Absolutely, man. This whole coaching staff, Columbia had, not a bad year. I think we both saw them a couple times on a Ivy League Friday night, right? As all of America spent all of their Friday nights during the fall watching the Ivies. So it's pretty cool to see them get to execute that in a very all-star game like way, where I love it when all-star games take whole coaching staffs as opposed to kind of piecemealing it like the Shrine Bowl or something lately. So it's pretty cool to see it. I do want to mention, I'm just seeing this on Twitter that the Ivy League tweeted members or Ivy League student athletes actually visited a local high school in Tokyo, interacted with a lot of the students there, and the pictures are awesome, man. Like that, you can tell it made these kids' days getting to talk to football players coming all the way from the top universities in America. So it's just cool to see that interaction and to see the excitement on their faces. And anytime you can teach football to anyone that just doesn't know it, it's man, it's so satisfying when you see the joy on their face. So hopefully got to experience a good bit of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, and some of these players are just great Ivy League stars, honestly. A lot of this roster is just like filled with guys that didn't get too much playing time and weren't really like starters, but there's a lot of guys too, that are just really, had a really solid career. So I guess without further ado, Jackson, you want to start off talking about some of the players that we're spotlighting?
Yeah, absolutely. So, obviously, neither Omar nor I were really able to scout the Japan side of things. So we are going to be breaking down a handful of these Ivy League players that are going to be playing in. And do you want to start at the quarterback position?
Yeah. Also, the quarterback position. I think the Ivy League was very young at quarterback, so the two
Very.
guys aren't really household names, even in Ivy League circles per se. But the first quarterback is Ben Mays of Cornell, and if you followed Cornell a bit, they almost beat on an Ivy League Friday night. I believe it was Harvard. Yeah, they almost beat Harvard on an Ivy League Friday night, and leading them at quarterback was the young Jamison Wang, who is just like a great dual threat. But Ben Mays, his backup, makes this All-Star game, and Ben Mays he's been a bit of a relief pitcher in his career at Cornell. In 2021, where he got most of his playing time, went 41 for 71, 561 yards, 3 touchdowns. Also had 8 carries for 21 yards. And he had one start against Bucknell, threw for over 200 yards, but he came off the bench in a few games and almost led Cornell back on some upsets in 2021. Cornell almost upset Yale. If it weren't for an onside kick return for a touchdown, Cornell arguably would have won that game. But Ben Mays came off the bench through a touchdown. Then he came off the bench again against Columbia, tried to lead a late rally, but ultimately fell short. So Mays, I mean, in the total of 2 plays that I saw on YouTube of Ben Mays, I saw a guy that is not afraid to get out of the pocket and throws a good ball, and just a guy that lets his receiver compete for the ball. So 2 passes out of 71 in 2021 I was able to see. May not be the most accurate judgment, but it's just great that a guy like Ben Mays gets to have his career celebrated in Japan and just have a nice trip to Tokyo, and potentially, maybe he will come in that relief role and lead the Ivy League All-Stars on a comeback victory against the Japanese All.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I will say there's not much depth to this roster, right? Quarterback wise, because it's Ben Mays, and then you've got Ryan Glover, the only other remaining quarterback. You mentioned, Omar, that Ben Mays and Ryan Glover might not be household names, but I do want to mention that, speaking of household names, I think Ryan Glover's dad, and or you could argue both his parents are. His mom is Tamika Foster, an American fashion stylist that's worked with Jay-Z, Sierra, some very high level names in their fashion, and his dad is Usher, if you've heard of him. And thanks to his parents' connections, he's met some of his idols coming from the football side of Peyton Manning, Cam Newton, guys like that, and some other pretty cool people like, Obama and Drake and Beyonce and other people like that, thanks to his parents. So it's awesome that I think he'll be fine in the spotlight. I don't think he's going to really struggle with that side of things. We could do a whole podcast on how cool Ryan's life has been, and really how he's also dedicated his life to paving his own path. He doesn't like being in the shadow of his parents, and I hope I'm not presenting him in that way. So we'll move on to the football side of things. 6'2", 210. I do want to mention he's got one career punt that was pinned inside the 20, and he's got 2 career receptions. So a little damasu, which is Japanese for trickery, right? Could we see? I don't know how strict the All-Star game rules are, like we know for the Senior Bowl and all that. So we could see, hey, if trick plays are allowed, maybe get Ryan involved on some. Ryan, he makes his mark in football with his deep ball accuracy. Consistently just goes through his progressions, lets the ball rip, doesn't scramble, doesn't get panicked under pressure. There were even a few times where he just with pinpoint accuracy throws his receivers open when they're not. There's this one throw where he throws to the right side detached tight end that was running a post, throws it more upfield to move him away from the free safety since it was covered too. It was just gorgeous to watch, man, of just how perfectly placed that ball was. Shout out to YouTube for actually having the all 22 of some of Ryan's highlights. Made it a lot easier to scout him, but man, I think Ryan will do just fine. I hope there's adequate film on X League defenses, but it's gonna be pretty cool to see Ryan play.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, Ryan Glover will give more of a dual threat aspect than excuse me, Ben Mays will. So, there a little bit of you know, run and a little bit of pass, from Ben Mays, a little bit of dual threat from Ryan Glover. He was using that capacity too. Also played in at Memphis and Cal, so he's using that capacity to sort of like a wildcat type of guy. So I'm excited to see or hear how they use him because there's no stream link, so maybe I'll have to listen to this game on radio. But I'm also excited about this running back room, and I think we both are excited about this running back room because there is something for everyone in this running back room. Going to start off with Isaiah Malcolm at Penn. He's 5'5", so I call him the Deuce Vaughn of the Liberty Bell. 711 yards and nearly 6 yards per carry in 2021 for Penn. Transferred to Saginaw Valley State, had 697 yards and 5.4 yards per carry. Great return man, had over 600 kick return yards and a 21-yard average, 20-yard average at Penn. Returned punts for an 8-yard average for over 200 yards. Also with the Quakers at Saginaw Valley State, he averaged 10 yards of punt return on 15 punt returns, 148 kickoff returns. So this is a guy that I don't think we've seen the last of Isaiah Marlowe playing football. I think he'll find himself as a return man. Kind of reminds me a bit just size wise. I mean, Trindon Holiday for the Texans back in the day. I mean, I'm excited to see, Isaiah Malcolm in this game, and I don't think he's played his last football game, honestly. After this game, I think there's plenty of football for Isaiah Malcolm, and we'll see for sure. But I mean, I think that's the player out of all these guys I'm excited to see or hear the most.
Absolutely, man. No, this is a pretty good running back room. Alan Smith was the guy that I really wanted to highlight the most, though. He led the Ivy League, man, with 107 all-purpose yards per game, which is just an amazing stat when you think about it. Ranked 6th in the Ivy League also with 19.1 yards per kick return. So something to watch out for if there is special teams involved. Yet to really find the rules on that. But if there is kick returning involved, you have to assume that Alan Smith is the guy, because I don't think there's anyone in there with that much experience as Alan. So
Yeah, and the thing with Alan Smith too is like I'm not surprised he led the Ivy League in all-purpose yards because Brown refuses to play defense on a yearly basis. It was a problem with EJ Perry. It was a problem last year, and it's like, of course, Alan Smith is going to get a lot of touches. Of course, he's going to be returning kicks, because Brown's opponents kick off a lot. You know, I mean, no dissing for them, but honestly, I think Brown is like the most exciting team in the Ivy League just because of their tendencies as a team, like their defense. But I'm excited to see Smith. But if you thought these all-purpose guys were too much, we have a bruiser too for Columbia. Bruiser the likes of Paul Governale. You know, the 1940s Heisman candidate. You know, if you had a Paul Governale reference on your bingo card, then you're a winner today. But we got Ryan Young of Columbia, 5'9", 230, 1,749 career rushing yards, third all time at Columbia. And Columbia is a team the past couple years. They run sort of a pro style scheme. They're marked by running the ball well. The guy he replaced at running back, Dante Miller, just a great back, had over 800 yards in 2021 in Columbia's 7-3 season. Ryan Young followed him so well. Had over 400 yards this year in a backfield by committee. And you would think that a guy like Ryan Young, 5'9", 230, it doesn't catch the ball well. Well, you know, Jackson, he always say, you can't catch, you can't play. He had 50 career catches at Columbia, including 18 in 2021. So this is a guy that I see, like Isaiah Malcolm, I don't think he's played his last football game. I think this is a guy that you can flex around, especially in a league like the USFL, where roster spots are very low. Like I think last year was about 38 people on a team in the USFL. So that's a guy that can save a roster spot, can be sort of an H back. He can be a running back. He can be all the things you want. He can be what the Ravens wanted Mark Andrews to be on that third down and short in the AFC wild card, you know, but you know, that's a discussion for another time. But I mean, again, Ryan Young just adding a change of pace, power to this running back room, so exciting.
Absolutely, man. No, it is cool to see that room. I must have I missed that about his receiving, because it's rare that you see a power back be that good on that. That surprised me. I had missed that, so that's awesome. We'll move on to the wide receiver room. I'll start off with talking about Ernest Double E Robertson, the wide receiver from Columbia, to keep on that. From the Bronx originally, actually, so like born and bred in really the greater New York City area. Played track and field also his entire time at Columbia, and you can really see that come out. They love using him on jet sweeps. It's got some dangerous edge speed. If we don't see like that much motion allowed and stuff like that, or like wide receivers lined up in the backfield, man, I'd love to see him on like from the slot, or maybe as an attached wide receiver to the line and then running a wheel route, like or maybe like a submarine to a wheel or something like that. I'm excited to see how the coaching staff uses Ernest's talents, and you know that they will, because no one is more familiar with Double E's talents than the coaching staff from Columbia. So, and who's obviously coaching the game. So I'm very excited to see how he's going to be utilized.
Yes, I mean, hopefully we see a lot of Damasu, as you mentioned. You know, Jax, I'm really impressed with your knowledge of the Japanese language. You know, just your ability to seek that out. And I'm
I
really
know
impressed by that.
all like one word that I know. It's very impressive.
Yeah, but like honestly, like you mentioned Ernest Robertson, and like I just see like shades of like the Niners in Columbia's offense, where it's like the receiver short game, the run game, which like I'm guess like you know they like to use Robertson on jet sweeps. He's got speed. Like the receiver run game is very incorporated. They got a stable of backs, so it's just like a multifaceted offense with a lot of weapons. And I think Columbia is just so close to Ivy League title. I really think they are. I mean, their first one in over 60 years. Going on to the receiver, my next receiver, or the next receiver that I want to talk about. I guess to talk about it as a package deal. I mean, we got Ryan Cragen from Penn, probably the highest profile player I think on this roster on the offensive side of the ball. He had 865 receiving yards in 2021. 93 catches in his career at Penn, 5 touchdowns, over 1,300 receiving yards. Watching his highlight reel, one of the few full ones I could find of any of these players, it was just so fun because he has amazing jump ball skills and great body control. It's just so fun to watch. Cragen transferred to UCLA, and I mean we know that the UCLA depth chart was stacked at receiver, especially with Carson Bobo. Um, for the Bruins, but you know, great talent. And again, I mean, I think Cragen's got more football in store. I mean, those of you watching this year, Justin Watson, I was Justin Watson on the Buccaneers this year. Jackson was, or was he on another team? I know
No,
Justin Watson came up this year
I
from, and he's
don't.
also a Penn receiver.
He was in, was he? in? Let me see real quick because I can remember. I believe it was at KC,
Yes,
but
that's what it
I
is.
mean, he was in
That's what it
Tampa at
is.
some point.
Yeah, Justin
Yeah,
Watson, yeah,
he's
was
he's
KC.
for KC. Yeah. Okay. I see it now thanks to Google. So 2018 fifth round pick for Tampa, but yep, is in Kansas City currently.
Yeah, just a great receiver too. I mean, that came from Penn, more of a deep threat than Cragen is. But yeah, like Justin Watson, Ryan Cragen following that footsteps. Like I'm excited to see him. And then like the other receiver I want to cover was Jack Bill, more of a return man type. Had 28 kick returns for 570 yards this year, but he's very versatile in his tape. He's entering the transfer portal actually, so very versatile in his tape. You played a lot of the slot, played a lot on the edge as a X or a Z, played a lot on the end of the line, and was really good. Has a really good comeback route. So I'm excited to see him get some play, and there's just a lot of options to return kicks for the Ivy League. You got Jack Bill, you got Ernest Robertson, you got Isaiah Malcolm, like just so many options. It's a very robust thing to select to choose from.
No, absolutely. This is honestly, it does have a good bit of depth, this roster. So it's pretty cool to see, at least in the wide receiver room. I'm curious to see like what the personnel groupings are going to be, at least for wide receivers. I'm thinking like, obviously a lot of 11 personnel. There's not really that many tight ends. And I would be curious to see if, hey, maybe even if you try and spread the field out, force them to play, three deep, something like that. I mean, especially with the arm of especially with Ryan Glover's arm, man, with the deep ball. Like if you can force them to play cover three and then put Ryan Young as the power back, that might be a lot of fun. Might be a long day in Japan. So I'm gonna go ahead and go with Thomas Glover, the wide receiver from Cornell, converted running back actually, so you can really see that toughness and the yards after the catch. Averaged 14 yards per catch this past year, had at least 7 catches in 5 different games, so it's very reliable to be a consistent target. And if they get a little short staffed on defense, maybe a couple injuries, as a high school senior, put up 39 tackles, a couple sacks, an interception, and a forced fumble. So he's probably not half bad if he can tap into those talents that he has as a kid. So excited to see Thomas play.
Yeah, and so one more note on the offense before I head to the defense myself. So with the tight end position, you got a guy like Joe Kramer, the ones who we haven't mentioned yet, Dartmouth. Dartmouth struggled this year, had a bit of a down year after dominating the Ivy League for pretty much like the past 4 seasons and just being in the Ivy League race. But Joe Kramer, a guy that only caught 10 passes for Dartmouth, but Dartmouth has probably one of the strongest running attacks in all of FCS. And a guy like Kramer can certainly find his way, in extra tight end packages in the league, I think. Because the Dartmouth run scheme, it's a power running game. I mean, back when they had Jared Gerbino, just a big quarterback, and like the inside game was really strong. This year they had Nick Howard. I mean, a guy that was like the Colin Klein of the woods of New Hampshire. Just a great year between the tackles for Dartmouth. So Joe Kramer, just a great blocking back right there. So going on to my defensive, the defensive backs I think are the strong point of this team because you just got a couple of ball hawks and I couldn't really find film on either guy, but you got Jason McLeod Jr., seven pass breakups for Penn, or I'm sorry, number 7 for Penn. He had 18 pass breakups in 2021, 3 interceptions. Couldn't find much film on him, but just a ball hawk, 6 foot, about 190, good size for a corner, and I think he'll find his way on a roster too. Like I'm not just saying that because he's an Ivy League guy, but it's like a guy with 18 pass breakups in a season at any level deserves some chance at the league. Honestly, whether it be in the preseason or whether it be like at the end of a preseason game, deserves some chance. And same thing for CJ Wall, who had 11 pass breakups this year for Princeton and was almost, I think he was a consensus, I'd say a consensus for first team all Ivy selection. Numerous selectors had him as a first teamer. Just a great player for Princeton. Princeton plays amazing defense. I mean, if you're watching Princeton, you know about Andre Yoshivas getting a Senior Bowl bid and like all the scouts visiting Southern New Jersey just to see Andre Yoshivas. Well, they should have been there for CJ Wall too. So we'll see. We'll get to see him play. We'll see or hear him play this Saturday.
No, absolutely, man. It'll be a lot of fun. Hopefully we can, if we can find a good stream. So I will go with my first guy on the defensive side of the ball. I'm gonna go with Mike Flugel, the defensive back from Columbia. Saw actually action in only 11 games in his career, really primarily on special teams. So again, if we see special teams come into play, then Mike's definitely gonna be a guy who can stand out. Other than that, this past year had 5 tackles and only 2 solo. With the lack of death man, he actually could match his career total in this game alone. So grew up in the Detroit area in high school, was an outstanding running back out there, and also as a running back had 5 receptions for 217 yards his senior year. So hey, if he can catch out of the backfield a little bit, throw him on the offensive side of the ball, why not? Because it's really a game with no consequences if you win or lose. So why not throw Mike? He's clearly an athlete. So
Yeah, this has quickly become the Columbia Lions preview show for the Dream Ball. I mean, we're
we are
not
going
biased at
over a
all.
lot of Lions guys. Yeah.
But it's like their roster is loaded because it's a Columbia coaching staff. So it's almost like, why wouldn't you bring your own guys there, like your own seniors? So I totally see what Al Bagnolian staff are doing. It's funny. So it's like continuing the trend with Columbia guys. I'm going with Scott Valentis of Columbia, 2019 freshman All America third teamer, 24 career TFLs, including 9 in 2021, had 93 tackles last year. But I think the thing that gets me the most about him and the plays I could find is he's such a great linebacker in coverage. He had this one play against Yale where he followed a wheel route perfectly out of the backfield and made a play on the ball. Had 13 pass breakups last year and 4 interceptions. Probably the best coverage linebacker in all the Ivy League. I mean, Jackson, you watch more NFL than me. I guess who's a good outside linebacker in coverage? My guess would be like Anthony Barr, right? Am I wrong? Am I stupid for that guess or
No, no, I wouldn't say Anthony Barr is a bad choice at all. Honestly, I really like man, I like Devin White a lot in coverage, honestly. Devin White has been pretty solid. But I do watch more Tampa than others. Miles Jack is much more of a pass rusher. You don't see guys like Micah Parsons either. They're almost more edge guys and outside linebackers. So Anthony Barr, you know what? It's a little bit late at night, so I can't think of a better name. So we'll run with Anthony Barr.
Okay, yeah, I'll take that. I'll take that for sure. Then yeah, like Valentes is just a great coverage linebacker. 6'3", 230. Kind of reminds me a bit of like kind of like a tweener guy like a Brian Urlacher coming out of college. But yeah, like I think Bagnoli was definitely smart in getting Scott Valentes on his roster. Yeah, that's a hard and slow your defense. Like, why wouldn't you take him to Japan? So again, the Columbia praise continues on this podcast.
And why shouldn't it, man? They're taking all their own guys, so you might as well enjoy it, might as well use them because you know how they fit. So I'll go with really my last defensive guy, the linebacker Solomon Egby from Harvard. 5'11", 235. He's a biomedical engineer major, so probably not going to be probably got bigger things than football after. National Football Foundation Hampshire Honor Society. So he's just a brilliant dude. If you didn't already know that, since he goes to Harvard, 20 tackles in the TFL this past year. So very productive. Still not averaging even like 2 tackles a game, I guess technically, but he is a guy that doesn't have the greatest front seven on here. I'll put it that way. So it'll be a guy that I'm looking forward to watching at least.
Yeah, for sure. And you knew academics was gonna come on this show with the Ivy League. But yeah, Solomon Egby just great, just a great representative of what the Ivy League is, what they're known for, honestly. And we haven't really talked much about the D line. So like for my last guy that I'm gonna talk about, there's a lot of guys that would fit into a 4-3 scheme. Looking at a guy like Luca DeLeo out of Dartmouth. That's one guy that I think fits well in a 4-3 scheme. He's about 6'4", 290, the 290 range, or he could even be a 3-4 DN, but I see him more as a 4-3 guy. David, I'm gonna butcher this, but number 99, David Madzivin Yika. out of Harvard, about 6'4", 265, interior guy, had a solid year, about 15, 20 tackles this year for the Crimson. But the D lineman I like the most, honestly, was out of Brown, Camden Gagnon, a bit easier to pronounce. 7.5 tackles for a loss in 2019. He's 6'4", 265. He's got like a good size as like an edge rusher. He ran a 4-3 scheme at they ran a 4-3 scheme out in Providence for Brown, but he's just a strong bull rusher. Like 6'4", long arms, really strong. I just saw him like not using really finesse, but just bullying Ivy League linemen, and it was just something to see, honestly. Like, I mean, I know I joked about Penn like not playing good defense, but that was not because of Camden Gagnon, like not at all. So that Gagnon is a player to watch in the D line. Should cause some nightmares for some X League for some Japanese star quarterbacks. And then just to cap things off, gonna talk about the specialists a bit. We have Will Powers, who was a first team All IB in 2021, second team All IB in 2019, honorable mention All IB in 2022. He was a Phil Steele first team in 2021 and a third team for Phil Steele in 2022. He didn't punt much for Princeton because the Princeton offense has been a juggernaut for years on end. They've had a number of quarterbacks be courted by the pros or play in the pros, like Charles Knopf, who played in the first ever game in Los Angeles Wildcats history in the XFL, one of only 5 games in Wildcats history. Charlie Knopf played for Princeton. Kevin Davidson, a guy that played in the East West Shrine game, got signed to a free agent deal for Brown. Um, played for Princeton. Of course, we know about Andre Yoshivas as well. John Lovett, he won a ring with the Chiefs, another player, another offensive product. But you just look at some of these years he's had. In 2019, he had 29 punts, just 29 punts, but for 1,166 yards for an average of 40 yards per punt, 36 punts for 1,578 for an average of 43 in 2021. And this year only punted 33 times, but those 33 kicks were enough to get him into the Dream Bowl. 13 of those 33 punts were inside the 20, and the year before in 2021, a third of his punts went over 50 yards. And I just think he kicks a good ball because in 2019, 16 of his punts were fair caught. So it really neutralizes the return game. So that's something to look out for the Ivy League All Stars. As for the punter, the Ivy League, guess what? He's a Columbia guy. I guess if you're Coach Bagnola, you're gonna trust your own kicker, and that's Alex Falcons, who had a solid career for the Lions out there in Manhattan. Alex Falcons for the year, our first career, 2-time All Ivy honors for the Lions. Just a great kicker in his career. He made 36 of 54 attempts with a long of 53, and that long came this year. So Alex Falcons is just a great kicker. On kickoffs, he's pretty superb too. 91 career touchbacks and 145 attempts. So he's got a very strong leg. And the altitude in Tokyo is pretty high along the mountains in Japan. So Falcons should benefit from that. Maybe an end of the half, a 50-yarder is in his future. But that caps all the guys that I have to talk about. Jackson, do you have anything else to add about the Dream Bowl?
I don't think so, man. I really hope we do get to watch it because I think it's kind of an unknown right now, at least if we can watch it live. But man, the more I've been scrolling through Twitter kind of here, just searching Dream Bowl, there does seem to be a lot of excitement and more from the Japanese side than our side. So very much looking forward to it.
Yeah, exactly. And I hope it just stays for a while because it's just not just the game itself and the money making aspect. This is just a
Yeah, no,
great civic
absolutely not.
event. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
no,
civic
absolutely.
event.
This is really cool.
It's just a great event for everyone. So I'm sorry, I just got unrelated. Uh, I just got someone tweeted at me, EJ Perry at a Waffle House, so I think this is trending with oh yeah, because Trevor Lawrence took EJ Perry to his first ever Waffle House because he's from North End. He's from North Andover. He's a Bay State guy like me. They don't have Waffle Houses in Massachusetts. My main exposure to Waffle House was when I lived in Georgia. So you can't blame EJ Perry, but a fellow Brown product. It's funny how that
He
works
could have
out.
figured it out. He could have figured out how to make it before, though. Come on.
Yeah, I'm sorry, not a fellow Brown product, but a Brown product as we're talking about these Ivy League guys. But yeah, it's just I mean I commend Trevor Lawrence for culturing EJ because I loved Waffle House is coming back from a game, traveling to a game in like Alabama or South Carolina just coming back at night, eating a nice Texas bacon and egg sandwich. Still, still,
Now
still
you're making me
the
hungry,
all-time
Omar.
favorite. I
Sheesh.
know. You're telling me. I haven't had meat in almost 2 weeks, so you're telling me. But but I guess before appetites take over, this has been great. Tune in to, if you can watch even a game cast, with the football moving across the field of the Dream Bowl. Do whatever you can. Just a great event.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it and seeing how it plays out, man. Hopefully the
Exactly.
Ivies
Absolutely.
win.
Hopefully they win. Hopefully they win. But until next time, everyone, peace, love, and soul.